Hey everyone. If you clicked on this video, you're probably wanting to know if there's any difference in performance in Fortnite between having a 60% keyboard, a TKL keyboard, or a full size, which has all of the keys you would need for any task available. And the answer is going to be partially explained by the gameplay I have scattered throughout this video, and I have the hand cam included to visibly show each of the keyboards that I'm using during the given gameplay. Obviously, right now there's a TKL keyboard being used, and the keyboard specifically is the Razer Huntsman Tournament Edition. The 60% keyboard that I'm going to be using in the gameplay that's coming up next is the Durgod Venus with Cherry MX Speed Silver switches. And the full-size keyboard that is going to be at the end of this video is the Razer Huntsman Elite with their purple clicky tactile, whatever you want to call them, switches. The differences between each of these keyboards are a lot starker than most people would think. You can definitely tell a difference with your fingers if you've been using one for a while and then switching over to another. The first thing I noticed when switching to the keyboard on screen right now, the Huntsman Tournament Edition, is just how sensitive the switches are. They're Razer's red optomechanical switches. They're older ones. As of the time of recording this video, they have a Huntsman Mini out now with sort of refurbished red switches. And I believe that the only difference between the red switches in the Huntsman Tournament Edition and the Huntsman Mini is that the switches in the Huntsman Mini are quieter. So if you simply don't like these switches because of the noise, then you might not have much of an issue with the Huntsman Mini's red switches. I, however, even after using it for a few weeks, had a slight issue with the sensitivity of the red switches on the Tournament Edition keyboard because they are a little bit too sensitive. They are optomechanical and they're linear, and Razer boasts about them being some of the fastest switches for gaming on the market, and they definitely are, but there's only a certain point that you want your switches to be as fast as possible when it comes to a gaming keyboard, because once they reach a certain speed, it's not so much about speed anymore, it's about sensitivity. And if you have a hard time controlling when a key is being actuated or pressed, then that can become an issue. And for me, that became an issue when pressing the W key. I got so used to just holding my middle finger on W over the last year or so of playing on mouse and keyboard that I guess I never developed the proper muscle memory to remove my middle finger from W, since you're always supposed to be, or at most times supposed to be, going forward in some manner when you're playing, especially Fortnite, but other games as well. But this video isn't so much supposed to be about the different switch types that are in the different keyboards I use. I just wanted to preface that for those who are wondering specifically about the Razer Reds. As far as the actual differences between the form factors go, if you have a large enough desk, then there's very little issue with getting a TKL or even full-size keyboard. My desk is quite large, so the main keyboard I'm using right now is the Huntsman Elite because I'm so used to it. It's the keyboard that I've been using since I first switched over from controller about a year ago. But if your desk is a little bit smaller, then you might want to consider a 60% or even a 65% or a TKL. Just, it all depends on your needs. If you're a person who can't live without the arrow keys or the home row of keys, then you might want to consider getting a TKL. It'll save you some space from not having the number pad and potential media keys there, but it'll still be enough to get you by for what you need. But if you don't need those arrow keys and you're fine with just using the function input on the 60% for any time you need to use arrows or home or page up, page down, delete, all that stuff, then go for a 60%, because speaking from experience of trying all of the different form factors out, they're definitely the easiest to have side by side a mouse, since they save so much space it's kind of natural for your body to have your hands closer together and feel more in control. So take that into consideration when thinking about what keyboard you want to buy. As great as it is having all available keys at your disposal on a full size keyboard, it still takes up much more space, and therefore, as you'll be able to tell by the last clip I've included in this footage, your arms have to be significantly farther apart to be able to control both WASD or whatever you use for your movement and other keyboards like building and weapons and such, and your mouse. For some people, that won't be so much of an issue. Like myself, I don't feel like it's too much of an issue. It never gets uncomfortable or anything. But if you're a person with shorter arms or something like that, then definitely don't go with a full size if you don't have the desk space for it, and especially if it's making you uncomfortable, because if you're uncomfortable while you're playing, then it's just going to dismay you from playing further, and you're going to get used to a habit of being uncomfortable while trying to perform your best, and obviously if you're uncomfortable you can't perform your best, so don't do that. I found it interesting using this keyboard on display currently, the Durgod Venus with the Cherry Silvers, because even though they are claimed to be Cherry's fastest gaming switches, they still are nowhere near as quick as either of the Razer optomechanical switches, the purples or the reds. And I guess that's kind of a given considering they're not optical, but the actuation point is pretty good. It's close enough to both of the other switches, especially the purples. But it's still not as fast as Razer's optomechanical switches, despite the name speed being in the title of the switches. It's just marketing jargon. I'm sure they are faster by the specs that they have listed on their website from Cherry MX than Cherry's other options like the browns and the reds and all that. But compared to Razer's options and apparently some other optomechanical switches that are on the market from other companies, other brands, these just aren't as fast. Again, though, this video isn't so much supposed to be about the switches in each type of keyboard. I'm just trying to preface that for those who are wondering about the individual keys or switch types that I used. As far as the actual form factor goes, you can get 60% keyboards with just about any type of switch nowadays, because in the past year they've really blown up on the market. Like Razer just came out with theirs. Ducky has one that has, it's basically the same as this Durgod, their Mecha Mini. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it. If you're wondering about 60%, you can get most Cherry switch types on those. The switch type is irrelevant to this point, though. I found the 60% to be the most comfortable by a small margin. There wasn't a huge difference between it and the TKL or it and the full-size keyboard, but it still was the most comfortable. And as I previously said, if you have shorter arms, then you're probably going to need a keyboard that you can have closer to your mouse arm or wherever your mouse pad is. So that might mean that it would make sense for you to get a 60%. In my opinion, however, the best of both worlds really comes down to the TKL keyboards. If you're someone who doesn't need the number keys or the multimedia keys, if a full size that you're looking at has them, then TKLs kind of serve the best of both purposes, because they have all of the function keys and they have the arrow keys, but they don't have the extra space that the number keys, the number row would take up, and that can mean the difference of a decent amount of space for some people. If you have a smaller desk, or if you just play really low sensitivity and you don't want to hold your keyboard at a funky angle, then TKL would definitely be better than a full size. But I've played sensitivities all over the board. I started with what was it, 40 EDPI, which was Tifu's old sensitivity. He still uses something close to it, I'm pretty sure, but regardless, it was low, and my desk back then was a lot smaller, and so I ran into issues with bumping into the number row, or the side of the number row rather, on my full-size keyboard quite often, and so back then it would have been a lot more beneficial for me to have a TKL or a 60% keyboard, but I didn't. So instead of just trying to fix that by getting a smaller keyboard, I really wanted to keep the multimedia keys that were on my board at the time and before thinking of the idea for this video. So I just decided to invest in a larger desk instead. So the bottom line is you should take into consideration what keys specifically you're going to need readily available at all times that are important for you and whatever it is you're going to be doing with your keyboard. And you also need to take into consideration how much space you have. If you have a very large desk, then just go with a full-size keyboard if the space between your arms doesn't matter to you all that much, because the extra keys can really come in handy sometimes, and especially the media keys. I use those in particular quite often. But if, like I said before, you have a smaller desk, then just take into consideration what keys you specifically need for your use cases and decide from there. Ultimately, the size of your keyboard really doesn't make that much of a difference for your performance in any game, as proven by the footage I've included all throughout this video. In case you couldn't tell, I play at about the same skill level throughout all of the clips. The keyboard size really didn't make that much of a difference. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you want something else similar to it, let me know in the comments, whatever it is you have in mind, and I will take it into consideration. Thank you for watching. Fair enough.